Time now to take a look at what's making headlines in the international newspapers. Solange Mijan joins us for the press review. Solange, we're going to start off with the German press, in fact, and the football body UEFA's decision to reject plans to light up the arena in Munich to the rainbow colours.
Yeah, and why not? That is the question that the German paper Der Tagesspiegel is asking on its front page today. For the rainbow lights, they would have been in support of the LGBTQ community and in protest against an anti-homosexuality law that's been passed in Hungary. Now, the paper Bild also condemns this move by the football body, saying that it talks a lot about tolerance, but in truth, it's more focused on business than values. And it says that the group's rejection of the rainbow flag under the guise of what its desire to be politically neutral, well, it doesn't really stand up according to Bild. It says that it has no problem with politically linked advertising, like, for example, the Qatar Airways ads and Russia Gazprom ads. So Bild argues that what is at play here is actually, quote, about reinforcing homophobes worldwide. Now, in that vein, the Belgian, some pretty strong words there. The Belgian paper Le Soir asks on its front page editorial, quote, what did we say or did we do something when Hungary began persecuting homosexuals, end quote. Or they're arguing that, like in the early days of Nazi Germany, now is not the time to remain silent about this law in Budapest and the, quote, shameful hypocrisy of UEFA.
Indeed, Belgium has joined other EU nations calling on the European Commission to guarantee the rights of Hungary's LGBTQI community.
Yeah, and as Le Monde tells us, 13 European nations have condemned the Hungarian law, saying it is profoundly worrying and grotesque. And the nations have called on the Commission to do what it must to protect European citizens' rights. Now, a member of the EU, Hungary has already been questioned 3 times by the EU top court for not respecting EU rule of law. But for the Hungarian paper Blick, this decision is for their government to make. The law bans displays of and promotion of homosexuality for those under 18. And the paper cites the Hungarian justice minister, who argues that, quote, the right to raise children cannot be taken out of the hands of families or handed over to lobby groups, end quote. For the Hungarian government, quote, Europe is under pressure by a form of a liberal steam engine, end quote.
Let's move across, Solange, to the United States, where the press is debating over why a sweeping voting rights bill failed to even be discussed in the Senate.
Yeah, and for the cartoonist at the Washington Post, the fact that the bill was blocked in the Senate, where Republicans even refused to debate it or even vote on it, it is, quote, a pure Republican power grab where the U.S. voter is held hostage. But for the conservative media, it's a different story. It was the Democrats who were trying to show their might, and the Republicans have stopped them. Breitbart, the conservative site, quotes Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who called the For the People bill a power grab. It would have created a national voting standards, but he says it's a Democratic power grab. Now, Politico tells us the fact that the bill didn't go anywhere is actually a failure for the Democrats, that they were hoping that this legislation, which many expected to fail, would have sort of, quote unquote, turbocharged calls to end the blocking filibuster. Now, the filibuster is the fact that in the United States, you can have a majority or 50 seats in the Senate like the Democrats do, but you actually need 60 votes to pass major, massive legislation. Politico says that the Democrats, their strategy went wrong, that moderate Democrats are still not on board with the progressive idea of ditching the filibuster.
Interesting. Staying in the United States, you spotted in the New York Times today, they have an exclusive article concerning the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah, the paper says that the journalist assassins, that they were trained a year before the murder in the United States by a private company, and that the training had received State Department approval. Now, the paper goes on to say that there's no evidence that American officials knew that those Saudis were being trained, that they were part of a crackdown in Saudi Arabia. But the discovery has brought again into question, the paper says, the U.S. military's partnership with repressive governments, and the fact that there is very little oversight in such oversight of who is trained and what that knowledge is done, goes and does once those people go back to their home countries.
On a much lighter note, social media is saying the New York Times is, well, killing it today.
Yeah, killing it not as in murder, as we were talking about earlier, but killing it as in raising the bar in excellence when it comes to writing headlines. An article entitled "When an Eel Climbs a Ramp to Eat Squid from a Clamp, That's a Moray" has gone viral because of the prowess of such a headline. And the actual content of the article, well, it's actually quite interesting as well. It's about how moray eels can actually hunt on land, and they actually have a sneaky second jaw to chomp on their prey. So it is, for the Times, a moray.
And speaking of love, The Guardian has published a few love letters.
Yeah, there is sort of a Valentine's Day summer love vibe going on at The Guardian today. The first article is a well-researched love letter to Joni Mitchell and her album Blue. It's celebrating its 50th birthday this week. The seminal work still rings true half a century later and is, in my opinion, my very humble opinion, one of the best albums ever made. Now, the second love letter tells the story of Peter and Lisa Marshall. Both of them are in their 50s. They were recently married. Now, there's not much exceptional about that, except for the fact that they were already married. And Peter, who suffers from early onset Alzheimer's, he'd actually forgotten that the woman who was sitting next to him on the couch was his wife. So when he asked her to marry him, as she was his favorite person, it came as a bit of a lovely, albeit tear-jerking, there is a bit of sadness here, surprise. They were wed, and it is a sign, and I'm quoting Joni Mitchell here, that love is touching souls.
Oh, it really is, and quite poignant there,
Yeah.
for sure. Solange Mijan, thanks a lot for that look at the international papers.